It is the fifth China Global Think Tank Innovation Forum 2020. So after this grand opening this morning, which is connected to the internet and for live streaming. So here again, thank you very much for attending this forum, and also thank you for your constant support, which leads to the fifth China Global Think Tank Innovation Forum co-hosted by PwCC and CCG. And also I would like to thank our sponsors and the different foundations and the Southwest University of Finance Economics and Wharton Center of Pennsylvania University in China. And again, thank you very much for making this event possible. Now, globalization is facing crossroads. Now, the presidential election in the United States just concluded, and Joe Biden just won the presidential election. So it is quite timely for us to be here for this forum today, elaborating on the role of think tanks around the world, cooperation between China and other countries, and the future direction for globalization. Now we have many prominent guests for this forum, and also we have a simultaneous interpretation available. So please make sure you can have your translation devices for interpretation. Now, without further ado, let me introduce to you our prominent keynote speaker and also the advisor for CCG, and also the former vice manager of CPC International Department, Yu Hongjun, and also ambassador to Uzbekistan, and also currently many other important titles, and also an important consultant and expert in CPPCC, and also scholar, visiting scholar and honorary professor to many higher education institutes. I once invited Mr. Yu Hongjun to go to the Southwest University of Finance Economics for a lecture, and I personally believe that Mr. Yu Hongjun focused a lot on academic study, and has always been an important participant in frontier issues research, and is very well experienced in China's diplomacy world. And he personally has published a lot of books and journals elaborating on important issues such as socialism or socialism with Chinese characters, China going global, responsibility for China as a major power in the world, going forward with the world, and different diagrams for world development. So very active player in the academia and the different other fields. So now with another round of big applause, let us welcome former Vice Minister of CPC International Department, Mr. Yu Hongjun, please. Okay, it is my pleasure to be here at Wharton Center in Beijing. Before my presentation, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. I am a CCG advisor and has participated in CCG's events for multiple occasions. As a speaker, I would like to thank CCG for this wonderful opportunity. So looking around the world, we know now both China and the world are now facing this unprecedented changes. So why unprecedented? Well, the past 1 century has witnessed two big world wars that brought us disruptive changes that lead to the booming or perish of different countries. So, and also the past century has seen the collapse of the previous Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, and many others. You know, we're facing unprecedented changes again, even bigger than those before in the past century. Well, the current world is now experiencing unprecedented changes that are different from the past century, not just necessarily the big wars, conflict between countries, and sacrifices millions of people, but everything is so alive and so real to us, particularly in the past 20 decades. The changes of power, the orders of the international community has been changed, and also globalization, the institutional change are becoming even sharper. So big reforms, transformations are now presenting us even more uncertainties and challenges, and everything seems to be beyond our control more often than not. So the uncontrollable diseases, the uncontrollable challenges now present us with even more severe challenges. So in this year in particular, the coronavirus spread soon started to plague the whole world. No country, no individual can be immune to that pandemic, causing severe and sudden impact. Actually, no country has now ever escaped from the impact of COVID-19. Maybe now we're soon facing the second or even the third wave of surge of COVID-19. Now, different cultures, the differences, the common ground, the conflicts and collisions, and the conflictions and also the contradictions are becoming even more severe. And policies, rules, multilateralism, and win-win are now being called for by all human beings. So in this current world, we need to have the right wisdom, intelligence for common goods through cooperation. And to have a better cooperation, we need to have effective communication, sharing, because in this world, no one country or one single individual can stay immune to the changes of the world. And we need to start sharing, start communicating instead of acting alone. The major powers or major countries in the world, different regions, must conduct dialogues, communication, and exchanges and cooperations. And this is exactly what we're doing here at this forum today, one of the important forms of communication, which will lead to effective cooperation instead of just focusing on the geopolitical circles or small groups, cooperation. So it is high time for the whole globe and for everyone in this modern world to cooperate and to communicate and to share. So we need to set up a series of rule of conduct so that we can restore order, restore cooperation. If we look back at history, about 13th or 14th century BC, the ancient Egypt, which was the dominant power in the world, suffered from more than 100 years of war. and then they draw their serious lessons and finally signed a peace agreement. So even 3,000 years ago, the big powers in the world already started to realize peace is the key to development. Actually, we need further studies about our history, about the natural rules of communication. So actually, I think even back to the ancient times, human beings already have had enough hard lessons of wars and conflicts. And then national sovereignty and the non-interference of each other's internal affairs and the protection of the national interests and justice and fairness in addressing international affairs have long been an important principle for the coexistence and peace among different countries. So this is a valuable lesson we have learned back into thousands of years ago. Uh, and then, based on these major world events and the lessons and experiences, the Geneva Convention, a Red Cross, and the United Nations, many other important international organizations, and the World Peace Congress were organized, and also the International Court and many other important international agencies came into being, which help us ensure the orders of the world and also the cooperation and peace in the world. And then we had the Paris Agreement and the Disarmament Congress and many other international agencies and mechanisms to support the right order of the world. But then the Second World War came, but that nation was established, and different the Yalta system was established, which played a very important role in the following decades. But still, those decades were dominated by the United Nations. But actually, we have to say that that mechanism has played a very important role in addressing major and severe challenges in the world, in responding to their crises. So we still have to say that the United Nations is now still the world's biggest and the most authoritative agency in the world. People used to say that the United Nations was just a tool of the United States to control the world, but actually, anyway, we have to say that the United Nations has been playing a very important role in ensuring the order of the world development. Now, in this modern world, we have also seen a difference in size. In Yalta, still playing its role even after the big changes in Eastern Europe and also the collapse of the previous Soviet Union. So now there needs to be a new international regulation. There's also the need for updating the international legal framework and also the security layout of the international community. So with that, it was brought into the upper priority list to discuss and to focus on.
冷战结束，特别是到新世纪世纪转换这个前前后啊，世界上
New century, which is a transitional period, it is no longer the case that one country can be a dominant power anymore. So the single polar world has already been changing toward a multipolar world. So, but still have to say that U.S. was still and has been always a dominant power in the world, and many countries have to um, accept to the fact that the U.S. is the dominator of the world, or at least the dominating power in the world. You know, recent years we have seen that, especially after the 2008 subprime crisis, the immigrant crisis, experiment waves, polarism, populism, and then many other negative factors started to rise up, which brought us an inevitable negative impact on our human society and our economic development. So this is not something good. So in 2017, when President Trump took over in the White House, everything came to an even more extreme level.
American first, the single standard, and to take care of international business, and never happened before. But this has been past the scores of years. So the current organization and national organization has been impacted a lot. And the open sky protocol has been activated only like several scores of days left. I'm not sure Mr. Trump or the old man Trump what he can do more. It's like a wild beast, like fighting. It's horrible and irresponsible. I'm I'm not sure if you agree with me, especially American friends sitting here, compared with the Cold War era, and even more complicated and more dangerous compared with that period, and even more intention there. Especially 2020 is such an unprecedented event happened for very abnormal year for economic, social, and all this factor has been impacted a lot by that. And I especially cooperation between all the countries and regimes for cooperation, international relationships, and all has been impacted a lot. We need to connect with each other by virtual videos, even in international events, and we're putting online events. It's necessary, but compared to in-person communication, I think in person is much better. We have to do the virtual meetings, though discounted, and the way we think, the way we communicate, the way we cooperate, and the way we governance and everything has been improved a lot. USA take that pandemic as politicized tools, not only America but also for other countries. Take that as a political tool of weapons. Pandemic taken that as very poor and to misguide international relationship, which caused further division between each other and also weakening for international organizations and for distorting the process for governance and how we adjust the principle, how we can compete centered by international United Nations and how we can construct a healthy, stable relationship framework in all the countries, how we build a new order structure in need all international organizations to work together to have a long-term exploration all together. That's why we need big communication on big cooperation in the world. For such a very big landscape need smartness, a heighten our smartness. We need to have such a micro view. But far in smartness, we need to have deep meaning, understanding on that part, has a in-depth thinking, especially for USA, in China, and who is another major power should responsibility for the human. As a nation, we need to consider not only about our own development, not only about security, but also we need to care about not only the safety, but also about the common development across the whole planet. That is about the smartness. We should need to not only take care of the major problems we face, but also trace the humanity. Not only consider about all the nations' cooperation relationships, but also we consider the nation and international organizations relationships as well as with non-government or private sector relationships, including about regional, local organizations relationship also need to take into account. I would like to mention something about Huawei. Huawei is not a national organization, but that has been a joint venture or very international cooperation. And how we can deal with relationship with Huawei, multi-nation cooperation. We need to have such a standard. We need to have such a generosity to deal with this righteously. And also we need to consider about the current traditional national organizations and new emerging national organizations. We need to deal with their relationship, not only about the current political economy orders, but also we need to consider about the human and nature, as well as a science revolution, upgrading improvements, and what we can with support, especially for the ethnic issues, political issues in human society, as well as about our governance on human regeneration and complicated issues. And to tackle this, because the big smartness of mindset, a wide and a broader, and it's of the same meaning that in Chinese. And we are always working in with and advocating for the vision, the globalization. Like he has mentioned about building the common future, the new conception about the shared future between all the nations, and to shorten the gaps and to abandon the disagreement with each other. And just like the mathematics to find the best divider and for big numbers. And basically to is most best way to evoke our consciousness, the new value on the safety and development of the safety and all the aspects need to be considered a very important of Chinese smartness and the insightness as well as for strategy making insight. We have a high view, we think a lot in depth. And for the human civil society, centered on that such a system not only fit for Chinese centers but also good for the trend of society. We are working on a Belt and Road initiative mainly is to aim at all the nations and the co-development, coordinate, and survive together and win and wax and win altogether. And friends from America, you do not accept that why China is leading the trend. USA is the number one. USA is the leading leader. I'm talking about the leading. What I mean is that for driving China, we need to be the example for others to follow. We need to be the precursor, to be the pilot, to start a dialogue, and to be the pilot pioneer on co-development, win-win, and for co-thriving. In other words, I'm talking about for human development, the bigger contribution instead of replacing somebody as the number one, as the everybody. So I'm talking about the leading is not leading for contribution. We need to know that objectively, and also we need to have very reasonable narrative on that part. Also very necessary. The White Economy and the White House will have new owner. No matter Trump wants or not, he want to do what he can try to fight against the result. International community, even international community, USA, domestic USA, and it cannot be changed without. And for home and abroad policies, as the new owner comes to the White House, there will be changes on that policy to create a specific on the policy making as well as the mindset, the mold. of cooperation. Democracy from the public and Biden and Trump must have difference between the two persons. In China, we should work with other international communities. We are willing to do that, to continue our cooperation, communication, and to change American government and to abide the responsibility as a greater power to work with all the other powers and to join hands, go for the same direction, based on the mutual respect, based on the mutual acceptance, and to facilitate about the safety structure, especially to follow the good examples and to go further, follow the trends. That's a new world trend changes on that part into a new safety framework construction must be should be something that is inherited from the following from the past examples and also instead of restart all over again, instead of like doing hitting the drum, telling the whole thing. And also in China, we always insist to be against the new hegemony and anti-unilateralism, to be anti any irresponsible changes, including about United Nations and the Security Council changes are reasonable. We are against that part. We are against weakening international organizations, but we are with the G20 dialogue. The role of G20 wants that play a major role. And we do not have to do that based on G7 and plus that. We can get developed countries club or developed countries plus new emerging club. There's no necessary. And G20, if we take forms of G20, play full role of that. China, US, including all international communications, is our common opportunity. And the history has proved that, to continue to prove that international organization is always exploration. No, there's no end on that part. It's not what we can do to end the journey within several years. They always keep going with human history, fighting forward, construct a new regime, construct a new orders. Very during the focus of evolution exploration is beyond the value differences, the differences of society systems at development level, as well as the governance mindset differences, especially for control and to fight against the collision between all the countries in disputation against each other. We should responsibility. China, the USA should do our part and to see the trend, consider our ability for new contribution. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Director. You is a very fabulous speech, very comprehensive information from globalization voices, including about the World War First and for governance level, United Nations organizations from history, from major power relationship, and how we can tackle all these issues very concrete and very detailed information there. Thanks again for Director for Mr. Yu, former Vice Minister of CPC International Department. Thank you again for Vice Minister. And we have another speaker, very senior, Mr. Wang Gangyi, come from China International Publishing Group, Academy Contemporary China and World Studies. A very famous person, famous figure in China, expert in the think tank. Also at the early stage, he has been working on China Daily as a very director and general editor assistant for China Daily. And between 2022 and 2024, Beijing Will director, and 2013 and 2018 working at the China International Publishing Group director as a counselor for China-Africa Friendship and China-India Friendship, and also China Military Control director, and for China, India, China, Africa, and business. And he has been leader in all these fields. he will offer us another keynote speech. Now let's welcome Mr. Wang Gangyi.
China, the Contemporary Research Institute. 王局长。
Hello, Henry.
非常高兴呢，在这个场合。
Such a pleasure for me to be here to meet you.
因为今天是一个国际会议，
This national
我
event,
想呢，我就用英文呢，
I
在
will
这里
may
做
use
一个
English
简短的发
to
言。
have a brief introduction, a
有些
speech.
不见得点的对，或者是全
That
面。
is something maybe incomplete and incorrect,
Thank you,
and
Henry, for
offer a
inviting me
speech.
to this year's Global Think Tank Innovation Forum. And it is my great honor to meet you, this distinguished group of scholars and researchers. I would like to take this opportunity to share with you briefly some of my observation of the current Sino-US relations on how to make breakthroughs in the bilateral ties in the coming months, and on what think tanks can do in this regard. As we have all known, during the past 4 years, President Trump has taken China as the biggest threat to American security, strategic interests, and values. Has fallen to the lowest point in decades, with almost every aspect of the bilateral cooperation and coordination coming under attack. Science and technology, security, military, cultural, education, and to people exchange. Have just announced. They were announced yesterday. And I suspect more are on their way. While it is widely predicted that Sino-US relations cannot go back, members of the international community are expecting that during the Biden administration, China and the United States would ease tensions and mend their relationship. Few like to see the world's two largest economies slide into confrontation. Safeguarding multilateralism and maintaining global cooperation still is a prevailing choice of the international community. The signing of the RCEP last week and the issue of a joint communique at the end of the APEC Leaders Summit 2 days ago actually are the latest manifestations to this choice. America is back. This is the message US President-elect Joseph Biden sent to the world in his first public speech to his supporters earlier this month after winning the presidential election. It is a clear indication that Biden administration will rescind unilateralism of Donald Trump, and the United States will join the international community to address global issues of common concern. Such a multilateral approach provides an opening for China and the United States to build consensus through political discussions and to find common ground for cooperation on multilateral as well as bilateral issues. High on Biden's agenda after he takes office on January 20th next year. Biden-China policy will certainly take time, but we cannot afford to sit back and let the sliding in the bilateral ties take its own course. While competition and rivalry between the two countries cannot be avoided, measures should be taken to prevent them from escalating beyond control. More importantly, cooperation or coordination could start right away on issues which obviously are of mutual interest, such as fighting the COVID-19 pandemic, addressing climate change, and seeking economic recovery, as many of the scholars mentioned earlier today in the panel discussion. China and the United States are each other's top research collaborators, according to statistics compiled by Nature Index. President Donald Trump has been trying to decouple Sino-US collaboration in scientific research, which has raised serious concern of the US and Chinese scientific communities. Such efforts should stop. The Biden administration could take immediate measures to enhance Sino-US cooperation on the research, development, and protection of novel coronavirus vaccines and other treatment technology and products. The two countries could join ranks to support WHO in mobilizing and consolidating resources and redistributing vaccines fairly and efficiently. Furthermore, they could work together to make vaccines a global public good, accessible and affordable to people around the world, which will be a huge contribution to winning the world battle against this pandemic. This hopefully will pave the way for improving science and technology collaboration between the two countries in other areas. Experiences either in China or in the United States have proven that remaining open to people and ideas from across their borders is vital for the success of the two countries. Educational and academic exchanges, therefore, is in the interests of both countries and provides an important area where improvements might be easier to achieve. Open to new ideas and ready to make friends. They are quick to cultivate long-term constructive Sino-US ties or to manage Sino-US rivalry. We need people in both countries who acquire empathy for the people in the other country and seek to work with them. Can be an enormous asset for helping the two countries work together. Component of academic exchange and have always played a unique role in Sino-US relationship. For people with different national, cultural, and educational background to meet and discuss vital issues of common concern. They promote mutual understanding through exchange of different ideas. They provide intellectual support for policymaking, and their reports and research findings influence the general public. Rivalry seems to have reached a new height, and a mutual trust has deteriorated to an all-time low. We think tanks in both countries should avoid emotional outbreaks and refrain from verbal attacks. Into each other and learn to appreciate the other's perspectives on the world. We should neither ignore our problems nor overstate them. We must shoulder the responsibility of continuing rational discussions, making constructive suggestions, and offering feasible solutions. Sober-minded and cautious when talking about the theory, like the Thucydides trap or the prediction of a Cold War II between the two countries. We should ask whether they really are applicable to the relations between major countries in the 21st century. task. While we Chinese scholars could do more to elaborate on China's peaceful development and its foreign policy, our American counterparts may help Washington make the right choice of living peacefully with a modernized, strong, and prosperous China, a major country with a different culture and different economic and political system. Sino-US relationship will develop on the path of peaceful coexistence, non-confrontation, and win-win cooperation. I represent here today is the Academy of Contemporary China and World Studies. Research on global governance, each of the countries cherish, and China's role in the current international situation. On how China interact with the international community. Hands with you today is full of unprecedented challenges, as well as opportunities. We think tanks could make our own efforts to help the international community stand up to those challenges, while seeing to that the opportunities will translate into practical benefits for the whole world. From a success. Thank you all. Thank you.
局长非常非常全面的，也是非常及时的一个演讲。So thank you, President Wang, for your excellent remark as well. You talk a lot and particularly about Sino-US relations, but you also emphasize the people-to-people exchanges, student exchanges, cultural exchanges, but particularly think tank, the role they can play. So I think that is very very important, that we have to really build the bridges and platforms and have this kind of dialogue that we hope that we have a new future coming ahead of us.